Welcome to Calvary Lutheran Church's Organ Bench. I'm Pastor James Travis. Today we're going to ask the question, what is the scariest hymn in the hymn book? And there's a lot of interesting ones. It's been suggested the day is surely drawing near, the end of the world. Then woe to those who scorn the Lord and sought but carnal pleasures, who have despised his precious word and loved their earthly treasures. With shame and trembling they will stand, and at the judge's stern command, to Satan be delivered. Now that's scary to think that if we trust in our treasure in this world, we will be in Satan's hand. Or how about the Battle Hymn of the Republic? Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is tramping out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Remember those words speaking about God sending his lightning bolt against us, especially if we have slaves. We need to go down and fight against those who have slaves. God will fight with us. Or onward Christian soldiers marching as to war with the cross of Jesus going on before. Now, for us Christians, that doesn't seem scary, but for a non-Christian, we're going to go out and fight as war following Jesus? Yep, that is scary. Or the old African-American spiritual, were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Sometimes it causes me to tremble. It's terrifying to think of nails going into Jesus' hands. You can see why this would be terrifying. The one that I chose, though, The Multitude Comes from East to West, by Magnus Bistrup Landstad. A multitude comes from east and west to sit at the feast of salvation, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the blessed, obeying the Lord's invitation. Have mercy upon us, O Jesus. This hymn is talking about the end of the world again, and that can be scary. And we ask God to have mercy on us. I want to look at this. Will you be at that feast? It's scary to think, will I make it or will I not make it? In Landsted's family, he was very familiar with death. He was a Norwegian parish priest, and kind of like me, you do a lot of funerals. You see a lot of death. His father was a priest. His cousin was a priest. And he was the resident chaplain in Galdstad for 6 years. You see a lot of death as a chaplain. And on top of that, his own family, he had 12 kids, and 6 of them died in early childhood. That's scary to think that you might lose children. Revelation chapter 7. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and holding palm branches in their hands, and they cried out in a loud voice, Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to his Lamb. It's scary to think, might I not be there? Or if you keep reading in that chapter, these in the white robes, who are they, and where did they come? I answered, Sir, you know. And he said, These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. At death will I be one that is washed in the blood of the Lamb. True story. When I was doing my chaplaincy training down in St. Louis, I remember being called to the room of an older lady. She was scared to death. Would she be able to go into heaven? She kept saying, I don't think I've done enough good works. I don't think God is going to let me in. Chaplain, help me. And so I shared with her the verse from Mark chapter 16, whoever believes and is baptized will be saved. So I asked her, do you believe in Jesus? And she said, yes. I said, you believe he died in your place to take away your sins? She said, yes. I said, have you been baptized? She said, yes. And I reminded her it's not dependent on her good works, but it's dependent on Jesus' good works. Jesus took her sin to the cross, and so she is completely saved. All of a sudden, the scariness of wondering what was going to happen was no more. Is death scary? For an unbeliever, it is terrifying. But for the believer, it's exhilarating, comforting, relieving. It's the best sensory experience ever. And this scary hymn, from multitude comes from east to west, is really exhilarating. Look at these words. A multitude comes from east and west to sit at the feast of salvation with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob the blessed, obeying the Lord's invitation. You realize it would be scary to be with these mighty people, but knowing that we're forgiven and perfect in Jesus, it's going to be great. And yeah, it can be scary being with this huge number of people, but it need not be scary because Jesus has made it so we belong there. It's also comforting knowing, like Jesus is our good shepherd, that we're brought into his kingdom. It says, verse 2, "O God, let us hear when our shepherd calls," in accents persuasive and tender, that while there is time we make haste, one and all, and find him, our mighty defender. You see, he's already found us, and so we need not worry. He has called us to come into his kingdom. It's relieving, too. There's lots of problems in this world, scariness, and we're going to celebrate Halloween soon, but do we need to worry about COVID-19? Do we need to worry about death? The answer is it's bad now, but then it will be great. All trials shall be like a dream that is past, forgotten all trouble and mourning. All questions and doubts have been answered at last, when rises the light of that morning. And finally, the sensory experience will be the best ever. The heavens shall ring with an anthem more grand than ever on earth was recorded. If you have ever been to a rock concert and it's pounding and moving, and that's why I love organ, because it's loud and pounding in heaven, it's going to even be better than anything we've experienced on earth. The blessed of the Lord shall receive at his hand the crown to the victors awarded. Will have mercy upon us, O Jesus. Hail to the victors. I grew up in Michigan, and we sang at the Michigan Wolverines, mighty as they are, but in heaven we will be hailed as the victors. That's what Magnus Bistrup Landstad wrote about. Minister of Norway, a minister Sander and Vestfold, starting in 1859. I want to read you a little bit from what is written in Wikipedia about him. He was well known for introducing contemporary Norwegian language into the hymns he wrote, contributing significantly to the spirit of Norwegian romantic nationalism, which grew in Norway during this period. Although criticized at the time for use of unscientific methods, today it's commonly accepted that he contributed significantly to the preservation of traditional ballads. His single greatest achievement was the Landstead hymnal. He included about 50 of his own hymns in it and completed the editing in 1861. Later revisions were used in Norwegian parishes until 1985, and the current official church hymnal contains a number of his hymns as well as the translations of the foreign language hymns. I disagree with that completely. Is that his significant achievement? No! His significant achievement is he calls us to be ready for Christ's coming. And people listened and followed and sang, because this isn't scary. This is a joyful reunion that we'll have in heaven in the feast to come, the marriage feast. I hope over the next weeks that you enjoy singing in church, online, at home, sing these end times hymns. Yeah, they may sound scary at times, but because of Jesus, we look forward to those days with that beautiful marriage feast that will never end. Jesus be with you as you sing.